Welcome again, viewers. This is Dex the Black Pants Legion. Now you may realize there's no video and only audio here. That's because, like the last one, this is an interview. Nothing is broken. Now, I've spoken with Space Station 13 admins before, and they are notoriously antisocial types who generally don't like to talk to people or at people for prolonged periods of time, as they are judge, jury, and executioner on a server, and can't be seen demonstrating any form of favoritism, at least in theory. I'm putting out an open call to any and all Space Station 13 admins on any public listed servers. The call is here, so answer it. If you're interested in answering or participating in an interview about Space Station 13, its history, and your server, please respond. I'll try to get to you and we can set something up. That being said, this is an interview with a Space Station 13 admin. The questions are largely freeform but chosen from a list, and the discussion does not reflect exactly the policy of the server unless stated otherwise by the person I'm interviewing. The reason I say this is I want to encourage an admin to be frank, honest, and open about their experiences without worrying they're shitting on their server, or to prevent them from being yelled at for representing the server or community in a bad way. This is a point of view and not, I repeat, not an absolute definition of doctrine on said server. That being said, I welcome our interviewee. Please, internet person, tell me your name, you wish to go by, your server, and your admin rank.
Well, hey there, name's Tully, currently a senior administrator for Paradise Station, where Rumalunti came in the previous interview.
All right, so here's the first question. I'd like to just open up with this. Tell us about your server.
Well, we've tried to keep a balance between roleplay and action, like our little subtext says. We try to keep things in the medium RP section, which means to say that we don't really expect you to immerse yourself kind of like Base Station or other such HRP servers, but we do try to keep certain semblance of immersion that doesn't evolve completely into mechanics-centric action, if that makes any sense.
It does, it does. I've played on quite a few servers, and I've seen some that are on one spectrum, seen some that are on the other, and I've seen some slide from one spectrum to the other. Here's the next question. Why are you an admin on that server, and what made you volunteer your time?
Well, it started in 2014, and I had one of the weirdest experiences because I can say that one of the people that invited me to the server, I ended up banning a year later, which was awkward to say the least. But I initially started off as just another regular player, and after about a year of playing, I decided to apply for Mentor because, and this may sound like a complete cliche, but I did it because I wanted to help people, I wanted to improve the community and give back something that they gave to me. From there, it kind of was a slow plod from mentor to moderator, trial admin, game admin, and then about 4 to 5 months ago, a senior administrator. And it has basically been one long journey in trying to improve the gameplay, the atmosphere, and the overall, enjoyment of the community on our server.
All right, that's admirable. What would you say is the hardest part of being an admin on your server in particular?
If I might say so, it would be oftentimes the lack of an admin help. We see a lot of people who, for one reason or another, believe that an administrator is already on it or that someone else will do it, something like a bystander syndrome. So we find ourselves many times having to remind people that we are not actually omniscient. We have an admin help system for a reason, and that they should really, really use it just in case.
So you're encouraging people that if they see something that's untoward or ruining the game or whatever, just to take that stand and help clean up their community by calling attention to you guys.
That's pretty much it, because if the situation itself does not warrant an administrator intervening in it, it takes us 5 seconds. It takes us 5 seconds to check in an antagonist panel to see if you were an objective or to see if they had any real reason. And if they didn't have a reason, then you just help clean up the community from someone who was either malicious or just sometimes downright incompetent.
All right. What is the greatest challenge you've faced as an admin personally?
Initially, it was getting through the... I can't really say this nicely, so I'm just going to use the word chuckle fucks, if that makes any sense. Every once in a while, you'd find that one person who can really get under your skin from just how ignorant and blatantly vitriolic they act and sound, until eventually you just sort of die a little on the inside and it stops affecting you.
Well, getting a little jaded, I understand. especially considering how much you have to deal with and the size of Paradise's population being enormous. You guys hit quite a high number on a regular basis.
I remember, I think our best high has been 160 something players, which is we're not boasting at this point. We're quite literally saying that we may have a slight population problem, but as far as I'm seeing, there's a large influx of players coming into Space Station 13. Not exactly sure from where, and the fact that we are mostly on top of the server list next to Colonial Marines tends to mean that we attract some of the 30-year-old baldies.
Ah, yeah, the great neckbeard swarm.
God, the Grey Tide can be a tad bit too much at times, but oftentimes what I find is that these are not players that are malicious. They're just new. They don't mean to do harm. They just don't really know better because this is a really niche game. They don't have a frame of reference to act like the rest of us are acting.
I understand that. And that kind of leads into the next question. What do you think are the greatest problems with Space Station 13 today, or at least on your server from your perspective?
Well, I can't exactly speak for any other server. I never actually played on any other server except for, I think, 2 rounds on Yogg Station in late 2014. So I can't really speak for the challenges that other servers face. I will let any other server admin from any other server speak to that. I'm not qualified. I hope you can understand that.
Certainly. But what would you say is the greatest problem with Space Station 13 from the perspective of your server?
Honestly, how steep the learning curve is. Because when you're trying to make a game, or at least on our server, when you're trying to establish some sort of balance between roleplay and action, it doesn't really just, it's not enough that the game allows you to understand it. You can't just, there's a word for this, I don't know what it is, but the point is, learning from the game itself is not enough. You need some community involvement in teaching new players how to act properly, and you need some proactive involvement from the administrator team and from the mentor team to teach players how to act properly. We've been discussing this for quite some time, and we came to the conclusion that one of the simplest ways to get people interested in role-playing is to proactively role-play with them. A lot of people have this negative view that 30-year-old baldies are just here to Grey Tide, they don't give two shits, they just want to destroy things. But whenever we run small events or medium to large scale events, you'll often find these new players are quite happy and willing to participate in them if given half the chance. So one of the biggest problems we have right now is not so much controlling the Grey Tide, but making sure that the players that are already playing on the server can teach these new players, this new generation of players, how to role play to the standards that they themselves profess.
So leading by example.
Very much so. Be the change you want. Be the change you want to see, essentially.
Yes, I've said that many times in my Let's Plays, but I also just kind of play a derpy barman who smokes explosive cigars on occasion.
Everyone loves the barman, regardless of how wacky they are.
Indeed.
They're your one reliable source of booze.
Exactly. So here's my next question, and every server has a problem with this. No server is exempt. How do you combat special snowflakes?
We recently added a change to our flavor text rule. For the longest time possible, we didn't actually police the flavor text whatsoever. So what you ended up having would be these, I'm going to use special snowflakes. I think the word has been diluted. It's a meaningless, pointless buzzword that people just throw around whenever they see something they don't like.
Indeed.
But I have seen some legitimate snowflakes, some legitimate cringe-inducing snowflakiness. And a lot of it really came from not just their behavior, but if you shift-click them and you saw their 3 or 4 long paragraph introduction, where their entire backstory was laid out and all their physical description was in painstakingly detailed, your one reaction, regardless of the quality of the whole thing, would be, ugh.
Yeah, I understand that, but I mean, how would you say that your station is dealing with that? Because I know there's a bit of cringe on every station, and no station is particularly worse on this. Everyone has their little population of people that are just, ugh.
First of all, we combated the flavor text aspect of it by essentially modifying the rule, stating that flavor text may only contain information that other characters can discern at a glance. Which basically means physical descriptions only, tall, short, freckly, color of your hair, etc. temperament, disposition, personality, backstory, all of those things are not permitted as per our current server rules in your flavor text. The reason being, if you want to have an extensive backstory for your character, if you want to define your character, you should do so via interaction with other individuals and not just by info dumping on a shift click.
So you're saying rather than put up a billboard with your entire character's sad backstory of being a veteran of 50 wars, you would rather have that play out through natural role-playing progression.
Yes, because not naturally, but the logical response to that would be most people would repudiate that sort of thing because of the same reason that we are. It comes off as incredibly snowflakey, as they're trying desperately, desperately, desperately hard to be the special individual that is unique and amazing, and people should pay attention to them. And what I found is that most individuals that don't do that, which is the vast majority of the server, tend to not pay attention to those individuals who will eventually adjust their roleplay to something a bit more not acceptable but manageable.
Yeah, slightly more mundane.
Precisely. No one's stopping you from having a well-developed character. Just make it realistic enough that someone can interact with you and not be cringing all the time.
I understand that entirely. So, what is your opinion? And I've had some admins say they like it, some say they don't. They have different opinions on this. And I am a little bit in this group here. But what is your honest opinion on people who play on your server and record? And furthermore, what about those who stream?
This is something that we've had quite a bit of a discussion, and I should point out that I've done that myself. The official line is that if you want to stream, you must ask for administrator permission first, and if you are streaming, you should do so with a delay of at least 5 or so minutes. The possible damage that a stream does is rather minimal if the audience is small enough, but that said, we do want to minimize the possible risk by having you ask for permission and running it on a potential delay.
I understand that.
As for recording, we never actually had that brought up. I mean, we've had plenty of people who record it on the server. We even have a group of players who record job guides, bit more interactive job guides for particularly difficult jobs, such as atmospherics. And we never really had any policy regarding that because it doesn't really infringe on any of the metagaming rules. Unless, of course, you're showing yourself to be metagaming, in which case that may be a problem.
I understand that. Just as long as it's not too intrusive or abusive, obviously.
Obviously enough. If you're going to start shitting on the server, there's really nothing we can do to stop you. But then again, you're just doing yourself to irrelevance in the drama llama sinkhole.
Indeed. Now, what do you think makes an admin good?
The ability to not... Context is what I have to say. It is exceedingly easy for you to take the rules and use them as a blunt instrument absent any consideration for the context or circumstances. A good admin should be able to use the rules, their spirit and their letter, and adjust them to the situation at hand. No two cases are the same, even if they look like the same.
All right. And inversely, I must ask, what makes an admin bad?
There are a whole host of many things that make an admin bad. If I have to pick one...
Indeed. I just want you to pick something that you would say this is the worst thing that you think an admin could do or pursue.
Lose their patience. Even if you are losing your patience in reality with a certain person, the one thing you should do is you should be able to check yourself and realize, okay, this person is getting to me. I am not acting objectively anymore. And you should call someone else to handle the case for you, as opposed to just venting your frustrations on the person that you're handling, regardless of how antagonistic they may be acting. Because at the end of the day, you're supposed to be the same person, not the one person to react to the troll in the same way that they want you to react.
All right. On the balance, and this is a big thing for many stations, on the balance between shitcurity and the gray tide, what's your opinion on how to maintain said balance for the equilibrium of the server?
Oh boy, this is a contentious question, isn't it?
Indeed, that's why I chose it.
There are many people who would go for one side and a lot of people that would go for the other side. I personally like to wear my biases on my sleeve I always mained security. I always mained detective above all things, even above security officer or warden. It is my honest belief that ultimately malicious gray tide is not exactly something that a server needs unless you're trying to go specifically for that atmosphere. For a medium roleplay server like Paradise Station is trying to be, at the end of the day, you're still functioning and working aboard a high-tech space station in the year 2561, I think now, 2561. So it doesn't make much sense in character for me for you to have 30 or so bald civilians carrying toolboxes and for security to just be there sitting powerlessly when they're supposed to be, enforcing security upon assets of nanotreason.
I understand that entirely. Thank you for your answer on that. Now, speaking of security and the Grey Tide, here's a two-part question. One, how do you handle security when they've just gone way too far?
I think anyone on my staff would be able to tell you, and this is something that I take as a point of pride. I take security seriously, and I take security even more seriously. I will relish any opportunity I have to take security to town, mostly because I really enjoy doing it, because the players who are normally security tend to be the ones that are the most, I'm going to say, enjoyable to handle. The insanity at times is so delightful and fascinating that I cannot help but chuckle at some of the stories that I uncover, some of the justifications they have to use. I can share a particular story if you want me to, and if we have time.
Please do. Please do.
I remember this was ages ago, and I think I was still a trial administrator, and it was really late at night. It was like 1:30 in the morning where I was at. There were no admins online. We had one of our maintainers online, and he pinged us on Skype because we were still using Skype at the time. And he asked for someone to come help because there was an issue with security, and he was involved, and he wouldn't be able to, handle it without it being a conflict of interest.
All right.
So I log in, and I assume you are familiar with the workings and mechanics of Cult, correct?
Yes, I am.
All right, let's assume that everyone else is listening. If they're not, you can just read the wiki page. Otherwise, we'll be here for 10 minutes. So what happened was, this was a traitor in a changeling round, not a Cult round. And what happened was a particular security officer decided to arrest the chaplain because because he saw him with a magic book that was his Bible, by the way.
Oh, God.
But I don't know if this applies to all code bases, so I'll just say it here. On our code base, the chaplain is hard locked away from being a cultist. You cannot in any way start off as a cultist if you're a chaplain. So this security officer decides to see this chaplain with that magic book and arrests him. Now, he's bringing him over to security, despite the fact that security is telling him that he's in the wrong. He refuses to listen, and he yells back at security that they're all conspirators and cultists. Now, it gets better. It gets better. The Blue Shield, for some reason, had security radio access at that point. And he listens to this, and he decides that instead of trying to be, blue sec, he's going to try to be reasonable. He goes to the security officer, and he tries talking him down. Listen, you don't need to do this. The chaplain is not a cultist. It's just his Bible. So the security officer decides to tase the Blue Shield, call him a cultist in all caps, and then run off. It gets better.
Oh, boy.
It gets better. Now, the maintainer that asked me to go online was an internal affairs agent. Now, the internal affairs agent obviously at some point has to get involved, so he tries talking down the person and telling him chaplains cannot be cultists. The Blue Shield is loyalty implanted. He can't be a cultist. Look at me. I'm loyalty implanted. I can't be a cultist. So obviously, the logical solution is for the security officer in question to harm baton the internal affairs agent while calling him a cultist all the time. Now, at that point, I intervene. I try to explain to him. He offers me this ridiculous explanation how all of security is compromised. Everyone's a cultist. There's a conspiracy going around. Everyone has magic books. Until eventually, and I swear on the gods above, this is completely true, and he told me, I demand that you give me the email of your supervisor. I want to speak with them.
Oh, my God.
Permanent ban quickly followed.
Yeah.
At that point,
that's amazing.
I could bring out the logs. The conversation lasted for 15 minutes, and this person was just so deep down the rabbit hole, I couldn't stop going. I had to uncover how this person functioned. But when it comes to security in general, I often find that it's not actually malicious, despite what many people might think. A lot of it is based on incompetence or just simply not reading the materials. Because let's be honest, the last thing you want to do when you're playing a video game is reading 15 pages of documentation.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I absolutely agree.
And with our current server policy, we expect security to follow space law and will enforce that via admin help. And then, of course, we have standard operating procedure, which is not immediately followed by admin help unless you are repeatedly breaking it. But in between space law and standard operating procedure, legal standard operating procedure, brooding procedures, there is a lot of stuff for a new player to get used to. And we find a lot of players just don't do that because really, why the fuck would you?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
literally thousands upon thousands of words, and all you want to do is play a video game. But the problem is, those words are there because if you, as security, don't read them, you're going to fuck up your round. You're going to fuck up the round for everyone else, and no one's going to have a good time.
I understand that entirely. So here's the second part to that question. How do you handle the gray tide?
I have not yet seen a case of Grey Tide not being easy to deal with. Most of the time, their thought process involves that person said mean thing, I hit face with crowbar.
Yeah.
Alternatively, he pushed me, ergo, I bashed his face in against the window and then stabbed him with a glass shard. Not exactly what you would call difficult to handle. The main problem is that oftentimes we have to continuously ping them, admin help them, because they just won't respond. We have the system whereby if you don't respond to 3 admin helps, we just automatically permanently ban you. You can explain yourself on the forums. And the lengths to which people will ignore an administrator is absolutely immense. We have to freeze people on a regular basis, otherwise they won't listen to you.
It's pretty remarkable how people just don't get it or won't.
I think it's often a case of they want their fun, and I wouldn't want to make speculations, but I'm guessing a lot of the people that we banned for general grade tie behavior don't tend to be that old and are just, teenagers or kids trying to play a video game and they don't really comprehend the notion of complex roleplay. They just see a crowbar, they don't really understand how the mechanics work, so they think, fuck it, I'll just destroy things.
Yeah. And that's fairly common. I think a lot of them are, young, who just don't kind of grasp the sort of game like this.
Plus, the amount of people who've legitimately told us that they haven't read the server rules is alarming. I understand that server rules tend to be quite bloated at times. We've had the staff point that out during our recent rules revision. But at the end of the day, these are rules that are necessary for you to function on the server. We expect you to read them. And honestly, I think the worst problem that we've had is when someone blatantly breaks a server rule, you ask them if they read the server rules, and they respond yes. At that point, it's a bit difficult not to just ban them on the spot because you're lying. I know you're lying. Stop lying.
Indeed, indeed. All right, next question, and I think this is a very good one. In your opinion, personal opinion, what is the best AI law set and why?
Oh, that's a tricky one.
Indeed, it is.
Now, if I wanted to go for best AI law set, I would probably. It's not corporate. I'll say that for worst possible law set. Honestly, I would just go for the basic Kruzimov. Not only because of the whole historical and literature package it carries, but because it offers a lot of flexibility. Because you can either be an absolute dickwad who will interpret it literally, and so you can have ridiculous decisions made, or you can bend it to try and help people or hinder people. There's a lot of flexibility involved in Kruzimov, precisely because it's so vague in what it defines. And I find that a lot of players don't really abuse Kruzimov that much. In fact, a lot of players who play AI use Kruzimov as an excuse to lower the number of executions and just try to get people permabreak, for example.
I understand that. So, next question. What is the best traitor you've ever seen as an admin?
There have been a very good amount of traitors.
But I mean the best.
Yeah,
like,
I know.
by and far the craziest person who pulled off the most insane shit.
See, I have to point one out then. It has been long-standing tradition that no one actually believes that you can murder the entire station with a hijack objective. Like, no one believes that. No one believed that was possible, in the slightest. Until one day, someone loaded up on adrenal implants, got themselves a chainsaw, and proceeded to murder every last fucking person on the station.
Wow.
Get on the shuttle. I'm talking something like 60 plus population, right? With civilians with toolboxes, with engineers armed with stun prods, with plenty of warning from people. They knew that there was a chainsaw maniac on the loose.
Yeah, there's no quiet way of doing that.
Yeah, and this person managed to murder every last individual on the station, and then just calmly walked into the shuttle, into the cockpit, used an EMAG, shuttle goes off, green text.
Amazing. Now, what is... Well, continue.
No, do go on.
All right. What is the worst antag you've ever seen? Because I find those are equally memorable.
I'm going to name myself. For one memorable reason, because I am not a robust person in the slightest. I'll just give you that much.
Don't play on TG then.
I am well aware. This is why I stay on Paradise. Because you can be not robust and avoid most of the chaos. I specifically have most robust required antags turned off because I know I suck at them. But this was a point where I had to steal the hand teleporter. And the hand teleporter is, in the teleporter room in our current map is basically in the middle of a central primary hallway. A lot of people go there. But it's also across the hall from medbay. It's literally 3 tiles away from medbay. And at that point, I was the chemist. So I made all the medication required, and then I thought I just get myself a multi-tool, a screwdriver, and a crowbar.
Yeah.
And I staked out the entire corridor for 15 minutes. No one went through the corridor. The second that I clicked the door with a screwdriver, out comes a security officer. I tried to disarm spam them. They immediately baton me, drive me to security, find the EMAG I had that I somehow forgot that I had, and put me in the permabreak. After that, I decide that I'm going to lure out the warden and slip him with a bar of soap. What ended up happening is the warden came in, I threw the bar of soap, and then I walked onto the bar of soap and slipped myself.
Yeah, it's Wile E. Coyote shit right there.
And the warden just kind of stared in disbelief and just walked out. I never spoke to him again. And at that point, Dead Chat was having a fucking riot, calling me all sorts of inventive names, let's just say that, and I deserve every last one of them.
I can imagine that. People are pretty brutal in commentary.
Alternatively, what I have to say would be the absolute worst in terms of worst possible antagonist was a vampire who tried to attack the the IPC captain with a stun prod and then tried to drain their blood.
Uh-huh.
And he did that in front of the bridge.
That doesn't seem like that went too well.
Let's just say the vampire didn't quite last too long.
Yeah.
It was one of those situations where Dead Chat just was too flabbergasted at how could you possibly think this could go right that they couldn't really say anything else.
Wow. All right, now here's a good question, because as I'm doing these interviews, I'm learning better questions to ask. So viewers, listeners, more likely listeners at this point, because there's nothing going on visually, except if you're seeing things, you should probably back off those drugs. I'm learning to ask better questions as time goes on. So the earlier interviews are probably going to be a little shorter than the later ones. But here's a good question, I think, and that is, what is your favorite round of Space Station 13 you've ever witnessed as an admin, and why?
There have been plenty of memorable rounds. I'll try to pick one. Perhaps the most amazing failure I've ever seen, which counts as an amazing round, was a time when it was nuclear operatives and no one on the station knew it was nuclear operatives. And nuclear operatives managed to slip away into the incinerator, and they were going into the ETA personnel's office to grab the nuclear disk. For reasons completely unrelated to this, that exact same patch of land that was leading out of the door had been coated in space lube by the clown 10 seconds earlier.
Amazing.
For completely unrelated reasons. So these coked up nuclear operatives activated their adrenaline implants, opened the door, and one by one they slipped on space lube. And everyone in the corridor just stared at them, didn't quite know what to do, and literally 30 seconds later, the entire Nuke Ops team was dead.
Amazing.
And everyone had a massive riot, and the round just went on as extended because no one knew what to do at that point. There were nuclear operatives, but 5 of them died within 30 seconds because of the clown space lubing.
That is genius, and that's what I love, and why I ask these questions is no 2 rounds of Space Station 13 are exactly the same, or at least they shouldn't be. And the things that happen on Space Station 13, I'm sure you well know this, people will just say, just another day on Space Station 13, at the end of telling the most insane epic story of just random chaos.
That is one of the best strengths of this game, I believe, because you can say something that out of context makes absolutely no sense and would get you very weird looks, such as, I gassed the clown with sarin gas, and then I threw the toddler down the disposal chute so I could blow up cargo.
Yeah.
And people will fully understand what you're saying, and they will call you robust as fuck for doing it.
Yeah.
And you can say, just another round, and it is just another round. Because even rounds that would be memorable to a new player just fade into the background for someone who's played long enough, because this is constant chaos, which I believe is one of the most appealing fundamental factors of this game.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I've had rounds where, I start as the basic, quartermaster, and by the end of it, I'm riding the mule with a PAI in it, wearing a road cone as a hat, as the King of Cargonia, dual-wielding assault shotguns fighting aliens. And who knew that at the very beginning of the round, I'm just sitting there trying to move freight, and by the end of the round, I'm fighting the alien menace as a drugged-out, crazy bastard. And that the game can take these turns and twists, put it light years ahead of many other games because of that. There's no railroad in Space Station 13.
Yeah, it's everything that you make it, especially with random events such as xenomorphs, for example. Oh wait, can't say that. Copyright.
Don't worry about it.
Non-denominational alien life forms based on a popular movie series. I find that many of these random events, especially the major ones, they either peter out and just don't work, or they irrevocably change around. And even 2 successful xenomorph infestations are not the same. A successful xenomorph infestation can either go with the station going on a desperate fight to the death until they eventually murder every single one of those alien bastards and wipe out all the weeds, or it can end with a death squad coming in to detonate a nuke because the station was lost. And it all depends entirely on the skill set of the players involved and not in any mechanic in the game.
And I think that's marvelous about Space Station 13. So
we give you mechanics, but what you do with them is completely and utterly up to you.
And I love that. Now, here's the last question, and this is fairly open-ended, but this is where you can talk about your station, your server, and the things you like to see. But what is the best sort of player for your station? Who would you want to welcome to the station? And the worst? Who is the people you just want to cast out and say, don't come back?
I'll start with the latter. I very much like starting with a negative and then building up on the positive.
Absolutely.
The worst type of player, I believe, is one that lacks class. Because ultimately you can make a long list of things that are forbidden, but there are certain attitudes that quite demonstrate that you're not here for the server, you're here for yourself. You just want your keks, your laughs, at the expense of everyone else if necessary. Usually when people start using words like cuck or nigger or faggot, that's exactly when I know this person is not really one of the people we want here. It's low class, low brow, low level humor that some people might find funny, our staff doesn't, and it really, for us, it creates an atmosphere that we really don't want, if that makes any sense.
Oh yes, every station wants to convey a certain atmosphere, and it's up to, what sort of people do you want there to encourage the right sort of atmosphere, and what sort of people should probably find another server.
Exactly. It's just sort of one of our current administrators, Nick Aladdin, has an amazing analogy, which is imagine Paradise as a soup shop. Now, this soup shop is heavily advertised as a soup shop where we piss on our soup. Now, you cannot go into our shop and say, I want a piece of soup that has been pissed on. That's not how it works. We advertise it as soup that's been pissed on.
Right.
Therefore, if you don't want soup that's been pissed on, you can go to next door neighbors to get soup that's been shat on. But if you go into our place, you get soup that's been pissed on because that's exactly what we advertise. And as crude as it may seem, that's how servers work. You need to pick a direction, you need to pick an atmosphere that you want, and you need to stick to it. Otherwise, you just get a massive variance in enforcement of rules and in player quality.
I understand that. So anyways, this has been Tully from Paradise Station, which I have a link down below in the description where you can find Paradise, their wiki, and join on in the fun. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for the opportunity.
No problem.